Cleome has the distinct honor of receiving the fastest Neovision awakening thus far. This is in part due to A, being placed on the popular Yigni banner only 2 months ago, and B, being long overdue. Cleome's Trustmaster reward boosts attack by 40% and grants a double 25% killer buff against Machine and Reaper enemies. It's effective, but unfortunately kind of small for its otherwise strong combination. Her Super Trustmaster reward is a two-handed katana. It doesn't have the highest attack, but it does have a physical killer against Machines and Reapers, which is always important when necessary. Onto her active abilities. Sword Agitato is a single hit attack with a very low modifier. However, we have seen this pattern before, so we'll just wait for another ability to make it stronger. Shadow Pianissimo deals dark damage that changes Star's Ray. Flame and Snow Pianissimo are the same, exactly the same, absolutely no differences whatsoever. Abyssal Melodia boosts your team's limit burst gauge fill rate by 100% and builds Dark onto Cleome, and then the damage modifier boost isn't substantial enough to mention. Crimson is the same but fire, and Frozen is the same but ice. So Symphonia cures any attack or magic breaks from your team, fills their limit burst gauges by a decent amount, and can be awakened further to raise their strength of Sword Agitato. Funeral Dirge, Machina, cures stop on your team, fills their limit burst gauges by a small amount, and can be awakened further to push the team-wide machine killer buff and the damage modifier of Sword Agitato. Funeral Dirge, Reaper, cures charm from your team, and then does the same thing but the killer buff is now Reaper. Pitch Black Performance, first movement lowers the enemy's dark resistance by 110%, boosts Cleome's attack by 200%, and raises the damage modifier of Sword Agitato. It's not too impressive, but luckily, on the next turn, it will inflict a 120% Fire, Ice, and Dark Impero, boost her attack to 250%, and then grants an additional damage modifier. But that's not all, because on the turn after that, she inflicts the Imperos, her attack rises to 300%, gains a 200% limit burst damage buff, and Sword Agitato gets even stronger. Prelude in F-sharp major fully restores her MP, cures any defense and spirit breaks on her, and enables a quadruple cast. Passives. But for Trustmaster reward or Super Trustmaster reward equipped, she gets MP, attack of a katana, and additional equipment attack when single wielding. She deals increased damage to Machines and Reapers, has a small boost to her limit burst damage, and a bit of physical evasion. Her normal attack's been changed to Chain of Bolting Strike. In this form, though she likes to hold a single weapon, she doesn't have any passives that pushes the chain modifier cap at all, which is rather unfortunate. At EX plus 2, she gets 500 attack and an instant limit burst. At EX plus 3, she gets an additional 50% limit burst damage buff. Let's look at her limit burst. It inflicts death, but it probably won't, so it just deals damage that partially ignores the enemy's defense. Time to change forms. Cleome's Brave Shift has a 3-turn duration and a lengthy 4-turn cooldown. Onto her active abilities. EI Strike can actually be awakened further for guaranteed death, but not really, so fast farming damage. Blade Blitz basically gets rid of the non-existent chance of death for more damage. Her next ability is Chain of Absolute Mirror of Equity. True Mirror of Equity deals damage and strengthens the damage modifier of her physical attacks. Performing Mirror of Equity lowers the enemy's dark resistance by 120% and deals dark damage. Shadow Sharp Note can be used once per battle. It boosts her dark damage by 30%, boosts her attack by 280%, raises her limit burst damage by 200%, and fills her limit burst gauge. Passives. But for Trustmaster reward or Super Trustmaster reward equipped, she gets a 50% boost to her limit burst damage and an additional boost to the damage modifier of her physical attacks. She deals less damage to Machines and Reapers, but boasts more limit burst damage to make up for it. She greatly prefers to carry a single weapon, but as with most single weapon wielders, she doesn't meet the full chain cap limit, so you want to address that. Let's look at her limit burst. It inflicts a 130% Dark Impero, and then deals a single hit dark attack that gets stronger with each use. She really just sucker punched Sephiroth and took his sword, didn't she? Let's rank Brave abilities. I'd prioritize Bond with Axstar to give her more attack, Shadow Sharp Note to fill her limit burst gauge all the way, and lastly Performing Mirror of Equity, as that just raises its damage. Time to make a damage rotation. I'm assuming her abilities have been fully awoken. On turn 1, cast Pitch Black Performance, first movement, So Symphonia, and choose either of the Funeral Dirges. Let's go with Reaper because she's not Sephiroth enough. On turn 2, activate her Brave Shift and triple cast Performing Mirror of Equity. If you can, activate her Limit Burst on turn 3. Otherwise, triple cast Performing Mirror of Equity. On turn 4, double cast Performing Mirror of Equity and cast True Mirror of Equity. But if you haven't used her Limit Burst yet, then that takes priority. On turn 5, you switch back. Cast Pitch Black Performance, first movement, Prelude in F sharp major, and Abysso Melodia. On turn 6, cast So Symphonia, Funeral Dirge, Reaper, Funeral Dirge, Machina, and Sword Agitato. Do the same thing on turn 7. On turn 8, cast Abysso Melodia, So Symphonia, Funeral Dirge, Reaper, and Sword Agitato. Finally, on turn 9, your Brave Shift is ready again. Switch forms and activate her Limit Burst. On turn 10, cast Shadow Sharp Note, performing Mirror of Equity, and True Mirror of Equity. On turn 11, activate her Limit Burst once again. From here, repeat the rotation from turn 5, filling her Limit Burst gauge, buffing her Chain Cap, and then switching forms to use her Limit Burst. So, EX2. Getting Cleome to EX plus 2 gives her instant Limit Burst and 500 attack. Given the nature of her Brave Shift's Limit Burst, Cleome would definitely benefit from reaching its max strength faster. However, given that her Brave Shift only lasts 3 turns anyways, you still have to wait out her cooldown before you reach its max strength. But 500 attack is definitely helpful, make no mistake. At EX plus 3, she gets a 50% boost to her Limit Burst damage, which can definitely help with equipment setups if you don't have the best equipment. But of course this depends on your inventory. Still, it should help more than hinder, but for the most well-off players, this may not be worth the resources for EX plus 3. So how good is Cleome? Her base form has some rather small bonuses, but as most of them are tacked onto her main rotation, it doesn't subtract anything from her kit. Once you've strengthened her abilities, she gets much stronger, though her base form still pales to her Brave Shift, where she can strengthen her Limit Burst the more she uses it. Obviously, she's best used in dark teams, but with her base kit, she could go fire or ice, though with a smaller damage output. Her damage rotation might take a while to reach its apex, but the resulting damage is certainly impressive. Still, she faces very stiff competition, as there's one fella here who doesn't see imitation as the sincerest form of flattery. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, then leave a like and subscribe. Comment below if you can Neo Vision Awaken Cleome. I didn't do any summons on Yigni's banner, but I do have one Cleome. Well, just one though.